I was standing in the oncology ward at Cedars-Sinai, holding a cup of terrible coffee, when the nurse looked at me with genuine confusion and said, "I'm sorry, but we don't have any patient named Marcus Chen in our system." The coffee cup slipped from my hands. It hit the floor and splattered brown liquid across my white sneakers, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at this woman in scrubs, who had just destroyed my entire world with one sentence. "Could you check again?" I whispered. "Marcus Chen. He's been coming here for chemo treatments, stage 3 lymphoma." She typed on her computer, her face getting more concerned by the second. "Ma'am, I've checked our entire database. We have no record of anyone by that name receiving treatment here. Are you sure you have the right hospital?" I was sure. I was absolutely sure, because I had driven Marcus here myself, week after week for the past 6 months. I had sat in that exact waiting room, flipping through magazines, watching him disappear behind those double doors for his treatments. I had held his hand when he came out looking pale and exhausted. I had made him soup when he said the chemo made everything taste like metal, but apparently none of it was real. I drove home in a daze, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I kept thinking there had to be some mistake. Maybe he was registered under a different name. Maybe they had their records mixed up. Because the alternative was too insane to consider. When I got to our apartment in West Hollywood, Marcus was sitting on the couch in his pajamas, watching Netflix. He looked up when I walked in, and his face went completely white. "Stella, what are you doing home so early?" I just stared at him. This man I had been with for 3 years. This man I had been planning to leave before he got sick. This man who had cancer. Except apparently, he didn't. "I went to the hospital," I said quietly. The blood drained from his face completely. "Why would you do that?" "Because I was worried about you, because you seemed so tired after your treatment yesterday. And I wanted to talk to your doctor about adjusting your medication." Marcus stood up slowly, like he was moving through water. "Stella, I can explain." "Can you?" "Because the nurse told me they have no record of you ever being a patient there. No Marcus Chen. No lymphoma treatments. Nothing." He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "It's not what you think." "What is it then, Marcus?" "Because what I think is that you've been lying to me for 6 months about having cancer." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I could hear the neighbors upstairs walking around, the sound of traffic from Sunset Boulevard, the hum of our refrigerator, normal sounds from a normal day when my entire relationship had just revealed itself to be built on lies. "I do have cancer," he said finally. But his voice was so weak I barely heard him. "Where? Which hospital? Show me your medical records." "It's complicated." "No, Marcus. Cancer isn't complicated. Either you have it or you don't. Either you're getting treatment or you're not." I thought about all those afternoons I had spent in that waiting room. All those worried texts I had sent to my friends about his condition. All the nights I had lain awake, terrified that I was going to lose him. All the times I had swallowed my own unhappiness because how do you break up with someone who might be dying? That's when it hit me. The timing. "You told me about the cancer right after our fight," I said slowly. "Right after I said I needed space. Right after I told you I wasn't happy." Marcus sat back down heavily on the couch. He put his head in his hands. "I was going to leave you," I continued, my voice getting stronger. "I had already looked at apartments. I had started packing my things while you were at work, and then you came home and told me you had lymphoma. Stella, please. You told me right when I was walking out the door. You said you had just gotten the diagnosis that morning. You said you didn't know how to tell me." I remembered that night so clearly now, how I had stopped packing immediately, how I had unpacked my suitcase and put my clothes back in our shared dresser, how I had held him while he cried about being sick, how guilty I had felt for wanting to leave someone who needed me. "Where were you going all those times, when you said you had treatments?" He looked up at me with red eyes. "Different places. Sometimes I just drove around. Sometimes I went to movies. A few times I went to actual hospitals and sat in waiting rooms." "You sat in waiting rooms?" "I needed to know what they looked like, so I could describe them to you." The calculation of it made me sick. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment lie that got out of hand. This was planned, researched. He had studied cancer treatment so he could lie to me more convincingly. "The side effects," I said. "The nausea, the fatigue." I looked it up online. I knew what symptoms to fake. You faked being sick. Sometimes I took things to make myself feel nauseous, like ipecac, or I'd stay up all night so I'd look tired. I sat down on the chair across from him because my legs couldn't hold me up anymore. Marcus had poisoned himself to make his lies more believable. He had made himself actually sick to keep me from leaving. The wig, I whispered. You bought a wig. About 2 months into his treatment, Marcus had come home with his head shaved. He said the doctors recommended it because his hair was going to fall out anyway from the chemo. He had bought a wig that looked exactly like his natural hair and wore it to work so his colleagues wouldn't know he was sick. I got it at a costume shop in Hollywood, he said quietly. I had been so proud of him for being proactive about his hair loss. I had told my sister how mature and practical he was being about the whole thing. I probably repeated that story to a dozen people. How long were you planning to keep this up? I asked. I don't know. I thought maybe I could fake a recovery, say the treatment worked. And then what? And then things could go back to normal. Normal, as if anything about our relationship had ever been normal, as if lying about having cancer for 6 months was something you could just bounce back from. I started thinking about all the red flags I had missed, or maybe not missed, but ignored because I felt too guilty to question them. How Marcus never wanted me to come to his appointments because he said the hospital made me too sad. How he never had any paperwork from his doctors. How he never seemed to know specific details about his treatment plan. I had asked him once what stage his cancer was, and he had gotten vague and changed the subject. I thought he was just scared to talk about it. I thought I was being supportive by not pushing. My friends threw you a fundraiser, I said. 2 months ago, my friend group had organized a benefit dinner to help with Marcus's medical expenses. They had raised almost $3,000. Marcus had been so grateful, so emotional about their generosity. I know, he said miserably. Where's that money? It's in our savings account. Our savings account. The one we were supposed to use for a down payment on a house someday. The one that now contained money my friends had donated to help my boyfriend fight a disease he didn't have. You took money from my friends. I didn't ask them to do that. But you didn't stop them either. You let them think you were dying. Marcus started crying then. Real tears, not the kind he had probably practiced in the mirror. I was so scared you were going to leave me. I didn't know what else to do. So you decided to lie about having cancer. I love you, Stella. I couldn't lose you. You didn't love me enough to be honest with me. You didn't love me enough to let me make my own choices. I thought about the last 6 months of my life. How I had stayed in a relationship I was unhappy in because I thought my boyfriend was sick. How I had canceled plans with friends because Marcus needed me. How I had turned down a job opportunity in San Francisco because I couldn't leave him during his treatment. How I had spent 6 months grieving a future I thought we might not have, when the whole time he was perfectly healthy. I was planning to leave you because we weren't compatible, I said. We wanted different things. We fought all the time. I wasn't happy. I know. But instead of dealing with that like an adult, you decided to trap me with a fake terminal illness. I thought if I had more time, I could make you happy again. I thought I could fix things between us. By lying to me every single day. The worst part was how good of an actor he had been. The little details that had made it seem so real. How he would come home from his fake treatments, looking genuinely exhausted. How he would barely touch his dinner and say the chemo was affecting his appetite. How he would curl up on the couch with a blanket and let me take care of him. I had been so gentle with him, so careful about his energy levels, so worried about stressing him out. I had walked on eggshells for 6 months, trying to be the perfect supportive girlfriend for someone who was lying to my face. My mom sent you care packages, I said. My mother, who lived in Phoenix, had been sending Marcus homemade soup and comfort food every week. She had called him her brave boy and told everyone at her book club about her daughter's boyfriend who was fighting cancer with such courage. I know, Marcus whispered. She's been praying for you at church. Stella, I'm sorry. My grandmother gave you her St. Christopher necklace. My 90-year-old grandmother had taken off the necklace she had worn every day for 40 years and given it to Marcus for protection during his treatments. It was sitting on his nightstand right now. I'll give it back. She thinks you're dying, Marcus. She's been staying up at night worrying about you. I started crying then, not for Marcus, not for our relationship, but for all the people who had been genuinely concerned about a man who was perfectly healthy. For my mother, who had been losing sleep over someone else's fake illness. For my grandmother, who had given away her most precious possession to help someone who didn't need help. How many people know? I asked. Nobody. I swear, nobody knows except you. So everyone we know thinks you have cancer. Yes. Your co-workers, your friends, your family. Yes. They've all been worried about you for months. Marcus just nodded, still crying. I thought about his sister Jennifer, who had flown out from Chicago twice to visit him during his treatment. She had been so scared, so supportive. She had even talked about taking time off work to help take care of him if he got sicker. Your sister cried the last time she was here, I said. She told me she was terrified of losing her little brother. I'll tell her the truth. Will you, or will you just come up with another lie? Marcus didn't answer that. I got up and went to our bedroom. I opened the closet and found the suitcase I had been packing 6 months ago. It was still sitting exactly where I had left it, hidden behind our winter coats. When I came back to the living room with the suitcase, Marcus looked panicked. Where are you going? I'm leaving, like I was going to do 6 months ago. But we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what to do. What's to figure out, Marcus? You lied to me about having cancer to keep me from breaking up with you. There's nothing to discuss. I can get help. I can see a therapist. Good. You should do that. We can go to couples counseling. No, we can't, because we're not a couple anymore. I started packing again, just like I had 6 months earlier. This time, Marcus didn't try to stop me. He just sat on the couch and watched me fold my clothes. What are you going to tell people? He asked. The truth. About the cancer? About everything. Stella, please, think about what this will do to me, to my reputation. And there it was. Even now, he was still thinking about himself, still worried about how his lies would affect him, not about the damage he had done to everyone else. You should have thought about that before you decided to fake having cancer, I said. I packed quickly and efficiently. I had learned to travel light over the years, and I didn't want to take anything that would remind me of the last 6 months. I left behind the books we had bought together, the pictures of us, the coffee mug he had given me for my birthday. When I was done, I stood by the door with my suitcase and looked at him one last time. I need you to return the money from the fundraiser to everyone who donated, I said. Okay. And you need to tell them the truth about why you're returning it. Stella, I can't. It will ruin everything. You already ruined everything. I turned to leave, but then I remembered something else. The wig, I said. You need to get rid of it. Why? Because it's evidence of your lie, and because it's disgusting. I walked out of our apartment and didn't look back. That was 3 weeks ago. I've been staying with my friend Rachel while I look for a new place. I haven't talked to Marcus since I left, but I know he hasn't told anyone the truth about the cancer because my mom is still sending him care packages. Yesterday, Rachel asked me if I was going to expose him publicly, post about it on social media, or tell his friends and family what he did. But I realized I don't need to do that. His lie is going to collapse on its own eventually. You can't fake having cancer forever. At some point, people are going to expect you to either get better or get worse. The hardest part isn't the betrayal, although that was devastating. The hardest part is realizing how long I stayed in a relationship that was wrong for both of us. Marcus knew I was unhappy. He knew we weren't compatible, but instead of letting me go, he decided to manipulate me into staying, and I let him do it. For 6 months, I ignored my own instincts and needs because I thought he was sick. I sacrificed my own happiness for someone who was lying to me every single day. I think about that person I was 6 months ago, standing in our bedroom with my suitcase, ready to start a new life. She knew what she wanted. She knew she deserved better. She was brave enough to leave. I wish I could go back and tell her to trust herself, to not let anyone, not even someone claiming to be dying, convince her to stay somewhere she doesn't want to be. But I can't go back. I can only go forward, and this time, I'm not packing out of anger or frustration or fear. I'm packing out of clarity. I know who I am now. I know what I deserve, and I know that love built on lies isn't love at all. It's just elaborate manipulation disguised as devotion.